Our textbook is the Astrology of the Old Testament, or the Lost Word Regained. Y'all take a look at the title. This book was published in 1892. The author is Carl Anderson. So this is one of the classics as far as I'm aware. All right. So we're going to pick it up on chapter 12. And this chapter 12 is a doozy. Chapter 12 is definitely a doozy, y'all. So let's get into it. I hope y'all are able to appreciate the information that we're going to cover in this chapter. As I said, this chapter is a doozy if you can see what's being shown to you. If you got eyes to see, and if you're willing to see it, all right? So we're gonna pick it up on page one. Ain't that nothing? Page 133. Y'all tell me these page numbers are just coincidences, y'all. Now, I've mentioned, as we've studied other books, that these page numbers are actually selected. They have to do with numerology. So 133, so we see the 33, we see the 1 plus 3 plus 3 is 7. 7, perfection, right? Universal harmony. All right, universal harmony, and then the 1 and the 3. I'm not going to go into the meanings of those, but you see the point, right? Everyone sees the point. So let's get into it. Notice the chapter. Now remember, page 133, we see the 33, and we see the 7. Who built the pyramid? Who built the pyramid? Universal harmony, 33 degrees of Freemasonry. There are really only 3 degrees of Masonry. The priesthood added the additional 30 degrees. So if I remember correctly, according to this author, he tells us that the 3 degrees of Freemasonry are the sun, moon, and star. So we have a trinity. The other 30 degrees were added, according to this author, to support Virgo worship or Mary worship, etc. Okay? I flipped right to the page. Look at that. I flipped right to the page that it's on. It's on page 11. Isn't that interesting? It's on page 11. 1 and 1, 2 columns. 2 columns. So we have 2 columns. The column of Boaz, right, which is the covenant of work, which is March 22nd, the spring equinox. Okay? And then we have the other column, which is the column of Yachim. The column of Yachim, which is the covenant of grace, which is the fall or autumn equinox. Okay, September 22nd. All right, so here are the two columns. Number 11, the 2 covenants. So, just to make my point, let me just say this. I'm going to start on page 11 at the bottom of the first paragraph that carries over from page 10. It reads here. Now I'm going to start in the middle so you get the context, okay? And Horus, or Mercury, so Horus is Mercury, Horus, hours of the day. Horus, or Mercury, the planet which is always nearest the sun. It's the nearest planet to the sun, whose movement is very rapid. Listen, y'all. Whose chief sign or house is the sign of Scorpio. Let me show y'all. Now remember, Scorpio is actually Virgo Scorpio. Y'all see the sign for Scorpio? It's an M with a downward pointing, well, with the tail going downward. That's Scorpio. So initially there were in the solar or ecliptic zodiac, there were only 10 signs. Virgo Scorpio was one sign. And then the Greeks, due to the original fall of man, they inserted Libra in between Virgo and Scorpio. Okay, clear? So now there are 12 signs. Libra and Scorpio being the additional two. Okay, y'all? So now listen. Who is Mercury, the planet that rules exchange? Well, let me go back. And Horus, or Mercury, the planet which is always nearest the SU sun, whose movement is very rapid, whose chief sign or house is the sign of Scorpio, i.e., or meaning the Virgo or the Virgin. So the Virgo or the Virgin, of course, is remixed in religious doctrine as Mary, the mother of Jesus, okay? Who is Mercury, the planet that rules exchange? Listen, that rules exchange. What kind of exchange? Well, you can exchange stocks on the stock market. You can exchange money at the time when there was money. You can exchange anything. You can exchange people and commerce. So who is Mercury, the planet that rules exchange, merchandise, commerce, all mediums of exchange between country and country, and go between, and messenger or Messiah, a mediator, who is so overfilled with the glory of the SUN Son, who is so overfilled with the Holy Spirit, who is so overfilled with sunshine, with light, who is so overfilled with the glory of the sun that it is only at twilight and early dawn that Mercury is perceptible. In other words, you can only see Mercury when night is about to, when day is about to transition into night, or is transitioning rather because it's twilight, or right before the sun rises. So at the transition points between night and day. Y'all got it? It continues. And truly dwelleth, and Mercury and the Messiah, the mediator, Horus, and truly dwelleth in the bosom of the Father. Now the bosom of the Father, of course, the Father is the SUN Son, or the ruler of our system, of our solar system. And this Horus is the measurer, and is the infant SUN Son, or SON Son. Clear? Mercury is the infant SUN Son, or SON Son. Of course, in Latin, it would be the SOL, soul. And that has been corrupted and remixed by the priesthood into a soul, SOUL. Everyone sees this? This then, listen please, this then are the three great lights. This then are the three great lights. Mercury, which is wisdom. The SUN Son, which is strength. and then the moon, which is beauty. Okay? These equal the three great pillars of Freemasonry. Now let's go to the next paragraph, and I'm going to go through a few lines, and then we'll go back to chapter 12, just so y'all can see the point. Freemasonry, corrupted by Roman Catholicism. Let me say it again. Freemasonry, corrupted by Roman Catholicism. This is why you'll often hear me and others say that Masonry is not bad in itself. It's been corrupted. Okay, so Freemasonry, corrupted by Roman Catholicism, has lost its ancient landmarks and been carried into captivity. Y'all see that? So even Freemasonry itself has been carried into captivity by the dark priesthood. And were it not for its oaths of allegiance, would be sunk into ignorance. Now this book was written and published in 1892. Published in 1892. Clear? There can be no more than 3 degrees to Masonry. All else are spurious. That means the other 30 degrees are spurious and purposefully invented by Catholicism to create dissension and dissatisfaction. In other words, divide and conquer and create a hierarchical structure so that they can rule by divide and conquer, by giving privileges, benefits, prestige, riches and wealth to some, making sure that others don't get it. Okay, everybody sees that? Yeah? All right? The first, let me repeat that. The 3 first and only true degrees of Masonry are universal, and when given under Hebraic rites include all there is in the entire 33 degrees of so-called Masonry. Masonry that debars anyone on account of his religion is not Masonry. Masonry that enjoins an obligation to support the Virgin Mary is a fraud and no Masonry. So y'all, this would include the ecliptical Zodiac, the perversion of the ecliptical Zodiac. Right? Because it's focused on what? It's focused on Mary. Or focused on Virgo. Okay? The mythology and all of that. The Bible stories. Masonry not instituted by the ancient people. Who are the ancient people? Well, we know from the last several classes that the ancient people are the Moors, the autochthonous Moors who are sprung from the soil, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. The aboriginals, remember y'all, the aboriginals, ab meaning father, meaning progenitor, meaning the original generator, okay? The fathers, the original, okay, yo? Masonry not instituted by the ancient people is worthless. Masonry not instituted by the Moors is worthless and of no account. So this should tell you, give you greater understanding, give you another dimension as to why we need to take back our heritage This is our birthright that I'm talking about. Masonry is our birthright. You see, it's the study of nature. And in this conversation, you should also see what? The Zodiac Constitution, right? Now, I've mentioned briefly over the last several classes, I've mentioned the circumpolar zodiac. The circumpolar zodiac, which focuses on the 7 stations, which is the original zodiac. Let me say it again, which is the original zodiac. Now, do you have eyes to see what I just said? Ears to hear and understand what I just said? Our ancestors, our heritage was focused on the circumpolar zodiac, the 7 stations. Circle 7, the 7 stations of the circumpolar zodiac. Circle 7. The significance of the number 7. 133, page 133. 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And of course, there still is the elliptical or ecliptical or the solar zodiac system, which is what? The sun's apparent path from the perspective of a man's or a woman standing on Earth. So it's the sun's path along the ecliptic rather. Okay? Every 365 days. Excuse me. With the focus on the celestial, on the summer and winter solstice, and the spring and fall equinox. Okay? But the circumpolar zodiac has been erased. You can only find, I've been researching it, and I'm still learning. But you can only find information about the circumpolar zodiac in the hundreds of years old books. In the hundreds of year old books. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that these stories, the mythologies, the Gospels, all of these stories, let's just say the Bible, okay? But let's not say Bible. The Biblio-Heliotext is more appropriate, okay? These solar books have to do have their origin in the solar zodiac system. So what was before that? That's the question. What's the history? What are the stories before those stories? Where's that history? So we need to recover that. So all y'all, all of you scholars who are interested in this topic, I brought it to your attention now. You know, if you have time and interest, you can begin to work on it. I would hope you share the information with me as you learn and as you find information. But it's my opinion that that's where we need to focus. Okay? Because all of these solar deities, they're supposed to be 15 from different countries, different eras of time. Okay, all following the same template saying major events in their life. And that template comes from the sun's movement along the ecliptic into and out of each of the 12 zodiac signs in the solar zodiac. But again, what was before that? What's the relationship between the circumpolar zodiac and the solar zodiac? See, we need to understand the mechanics and how this whole thing works out. Ancient Masonry, let me go back. The Escheat sun, moon, and star are the three lights. The Escheat sun, moon, and star are the three lights. But a sign has no ruling. And yet the 30 degrees of a sign, so 1 degree, scholars, 1 day equals 1 degree. So 1 month has 30 days. So the sun is in 1 month for 30 degrees, right? So every day, when you look at the sundial, every 24 hours, the sun will move, the shadow will cast 1 degree further. 1 degree further. Okay, so 30 degrees in 1 month means 30 degree shadow. Each day casts a 1 degree shadow on the sundial. Okay, and then the sun itself, my understanding of this, the sun itself is said to be about 3 degrees. Now, I don't understand how that works out, but this is how I got the story. Okay, so that would be the 33 degrees. So the 30 degrees in 1 month, 1 degree per month, and then the sun itself being 30 degrees before it enters into the next zodiac sign. So you get 33 degrees. All right, y'all? But a sign has no ruling. And yet, the 30 degrees of a sign is 1 month, right? 12 zodiac signs, 12 months, 1 day, 1 degree, and then 30 days in a month. So, and yet 30 degrees of a sign were added to make up modern masonry. Excuse me. "30 degrees were added to make up modern masonry." Now remember, the author has brought it to our attention that modern masonry is focused on Virgo worship. So they needed to add these 30 degrees in order to bolster up, to build their story about Virgo worship or Virgin Mary worship, okay? Which according to this author is a fraud. Ancient masonry is found all over the habitable world. Modern masonry in but a small portion of it. Modern masonry in but a small portion. So maybe what? Europe, Middle East, okay? The power centers. Ancient masonry will last while the world endures. Modern masonry will die. Again, the author says, this is page 12. Modern masonry will die in derision as the disbelief in the Virgin Mary and Roman Catholicism fades out. And isn't that what we see happening right now, y'all? I'm introducing back to our community. I'm not saying I'm the only one who knows this. There are probably other people who know this. I don't know. I haven't heard any more talking about the circumpolar zodiac. As far as I know, It doesn't even matter. Right now, at this moment, at this time, I'm bringing it to our attention, to the Moors of the Moroccan Empire. This message is to you. Modern Masonry will die in derision as the disbelief in the Virgin Mary and Roman Catholicism fades out. And it is rapidly dying in all places where science and knowledge prevail. A religion builded upon a dream, that's a lie, right, is not one to last. And Catholicism has for its authority, quote unquote, and the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. And the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. How much more to the point, the ancient religion was giving testimony, quote unquote. This is coming from, it looks like Isaiah, I forgot the Roman numerals, XL, I, verse 10 through 13. So XL, I think it's 43. But y'all check it because I don't remember. Quote unquote. Thus saith the Lord, thus saith Crisco, thus saith Christos, thus saith the oil. He who declares himself to be one and indivisible, who will allow no other lowercase gods to be worshipped, he who alone is the Savior. But the point I want to make here is that modern Masonry will die in derision as the disbelief in the Virgin Mary and Roman Catholicism fades out, as the belief in Christianity fades out. And that's what we see happening around us. People are abandoning Christianity, but not fast enough. But when you abandon Christianity, that means, in my mind, where I'm at, that means that we discovered that the ecliptic or ecliptical zodiac is not the whole story. Or we are misdirected by focusing on the ecliptical zodiac. But as we find this information out, we're not going to focus on the ecliptical zodiac any longer. We're going to return to the principles and heritage of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, which is the circumpolar zodiac projection. The circumpolar zodiac projection, and no longer focus on the solar zodiac projection with its 12 or 10 zodiac signs. Okay, y'all? And I'm going to tell y'all what I smell. What I smell is our ancestors, the dark priesthood, I'm putting my shoes on, my slippers on. The dark priesthood, our ancestors, who shifted our orientation from the circumpolar zodiac projection and shifted it to the solar zodiac projection for the purpose of introducing these mythologies. And if they're not mythologies, maybe they're a blend of true stories. For example, I heard what's his name? Well, there's some evidence that I think it's the 21st dynasty, the 21st dynasty of the Egyptians, the 21st dynasty of kings, pharaohs rather, in Egypt, Kemet. These are the major Bible characters, well, Old Testament Bible characters, like King David, King Solomon, etc. But I have to research it out more. Okay, so in other words, those stories were true in Kemet, if the Kemet stories are true, if that history is true. And then it was remixed, the names, the places, and etc. were changed and applied to a group that they call Israel, Isis, Ra, and El. Y'all heard? But we'll get into that later. All right? So anyway, let's get back to chapter 12. So who has eyes to see and perceive the information that I just covered? Who has ears to hear and understand the information I just presented to you? And who is still blind and deaf? So page 133, chapter 12. Chapter 12. Wow, there you go. Chapter 12. 12 disciples. 12 zodiac signs. Y'all see the energy that's been embedded into this chapter? So now we have to ask why. Why did they put this chapter, why did they put this on page 133 and make it chapter 12? Well, here's the topic. Who builded the pyramid? So it begs the question, what does a pyramid have to do with the number 7, with the number 33, and with the number 12? And why are they energizing that with so much power? So much numerological and cosmic energy. Why? Hope everyone can see what the Spirit is saying to the congregation. Nearly 6, that's very interesting, nearly 6 centuries before, I'm saying 6 is very interesting. Nearly 6 centuries, see 3 and 3 is 6. Nearly 6 centuries before the reputed birth of Christ, Solon. So there's a character called Solon, S-O-L-O-N, who is a Greek philosopher. He visited Egypt. Now, stop. Egypt allegedly is the flower of the Nile, right? It's the blossom of all the Nile Valley civilizations. That's how I heard Dr. Clark talk about Egypt. It wasn't better, more advanced than any civilization that came before it. The difference between Egypt and the others, according to Dr. Clark, is that they built in stone. And now there's a record. But they got their technology, their knowledge base from the nations, from their ancient ancestors. Okay, y'all heard? Now, wealth, prominence, prestige, they got FU money. They don't need anybody, right? They don't need anybody. So now here you have someone, a Greek philosopher by the name of Solon. S-O-L. Oh, and, oh, wait. Do y'all see? His name is Solon. Let me show y'all this. So this is a compound word. Look at this. This is a compound word. Scholars, if you've been following my work, coming to these classes regularly, I hope you see what's happening here. A Greek philosopher named Solon. Well, Solon is a compound word. S-O-L, soul. Sun, S-U-N. Soul is Latin for S-U-N, sun. This Greek philosopher's name is Solon. Now this is a compound word, 2 words. Soul, Latin, again, S-U-N, sun. And then on, if my memory serves me correctly, on is the Heliopolis, the city of the sun. So now we're seeing what? Something almost similar. Y'all smell it. Solon, sun, city of the sun. We see something similar with Solomon, right? Sol, S-O-L, Om, O-M, and then on. Now, if I remember correctly, the Om, maybe in the Hindu language or somewhere in that area, it also means sun. Do y'all see that? Do you see the value, the practical value of knowing root words, Now, in my Saturday class, Saturday 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's summertime now, so we may change the schedule. So if y'all want to come to that class. But we cover this kind of information all the time. Linguistics, root words, base words, prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and how they contribute to the meaning of a word, of course, and the grammar rules. Okay? So what did you just learn, scholars? What did you just learn? Anticipate. Be suspicious. Why is this Greek philosopher's name the sun and city of the sun? Why? What's the hidden message in that? See, if you don't have the skill set, if you're not aware of root words, base words, infixes, prefixes, suffixes, if you're not aware of words being, 2 words being brought together, 3 words, 4 words, 5 words being brought together to make 1 word, and let's say the Helios bibliothèque and other scripture, if you're not aware of this technique, this literary technique, then you're not reading. You don't understand what's on the page. So again, a Greek philosopher whose name is Sun, city of the sun, whose name is Solon, visited Egypt and had a frequent intercourse with the priests. These would be the professors. Why would, think, why would Egyptian professors want anything to do with a Greek philosopher who comes from a little nation state that ain't Escheat from their point of view? Why would they give this Greek philosopher the time of day? What's their incentive? What's their motive to even listen to this Greek speak, who in their eyes, he's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. And why is that? Because if you believe the history, they would know that the Greeks, you know who does a fine job on this? Dr. He wrote the book, the historical origins of Christianity. He also wrote the book, The Historical Origins of Islam. What is his name? Well, y'all know who I'm talking about. But he does a fine job of making the case, showing the evidence that the Greeks didn't have a writing system. So how could they have any institutions, etc.? His name will come to me. When it comes to me, I'll share it with y'all. Why would these Egyptian priests, learned, intelligent men who have all kinds of responsibilities and duties, families, other interests, why would they give a Greek philosopher the time of day? Think about it in your life right now. Let's say you call, let's say you go to, no matter where you're at in the world, you go to the elite universities and go there and try to sit down and talk to some of their professors. See who gives you the time of day. See if they even let you on campus, let alone let you into the classroom or the professor's offices. You're not going to get access. So we have to think critically. What's the probability that these learned, prestigious, busy, Hermetic professors, scientists and engineers who got their own work and projects going on, own responsibilities, professional and family, and personal interests, why would they give this nobody, Greek philosopher, the time of day? How would they even get access? How would they even know about this Greek philosopher? You mean to tell me that anybody can just walk up in there? They ain't got no kind of security? Anybody can just walk up in there, especially a foreigner? Someone who has pale skin? And people would have been looking at this pale skinned person like, ugh, what's wrong with you? And they just gonna walk up in there and get access? No, very improbable, if not impossible. But anyway, let's go along with the story. So Solon, this guy whose name is Sun and City of the Sun, y'all should keep that in mind. Solar, Zodiac, projection, Mary worship, Virgo, Mother Mary worship, JC, the Christ figure worship. Christianity is commerce. Christianity is based on debt, sin, bondage. So this is a world view. Extreme commercialism, extreme capitalism, and bondage. Solon, a Greek philosopher, visited Egypt. And by the way, I almost forgot to mention this. Let's go back to page 11. I want to make this statement. Page 12. The author says here, a religion builded upon a dream is not one to last. And Catholicism has for its authority, quote unquote, and the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. Mary wasn't cheating. She knocked up by the Holy Spirit. But wait a minute. That sounds like Joseph and Pharaoh. Pharaoh, if I remember correctly, y'all, correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph was able to interpret the dream of Pharaoh, right? The 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. All of that came through a dream. All of that came through a dream. And what happened with that dream with Joseph and Pharaoh? That dream was used, and the interpretation of the dream was used by Joseph, colluding with Pharaoh to enslave the ancient Hermetic people. Joseph enslaved the Egyptians. The whole basis for it was a dream. Was a dream. And they stripped the Egyptians. They stripped the Hermetic people. They stripped the autochthonous mourners and put them in bondage. And because they thought it was done through what they thought was God, according to the story, they were happy to be enslaved. They agreed. In other words, they consented to be in bondage, to be the property of Pharaoh. And Joseph managed all of the property of the house of Pharaoh. Something to think about. Now, I have invited anybody who wants to come on this platform and make the case that Joseph did not enslave the Egyptians. You're welcome to come on this platform and give your presentation. I'm not going to challenge you. That's not my style. That's not who I am. I'm not interested in proving anybody wrong. But if you want to come in and make your case, you're more than welcome to do so. Just know what you're talking about, okay? I've done some research, and to my surprise, rabbis have written about this. Yeah, rabbis have written it, and they don't deny it. The rabbis don't deny that Joseph enslaved the Egyptians. And their alibi, their excuse, is that Joseph enslaved the Egyptians and stripped them because he was aware that eventually the Egyptians would enslave the Israelites. And Joseph wanted to weaken the Egyptians so that the suffering or that the slavery that the Egyptians would put on the Israelites would be more mild, or as mild as possible. That was the alibi that the rabbis were making to justify Joseph enslaving. Now, you never hear about this, right? You never hear. What we hear about is the Egyptians enslaving Israel. But they never talk about Joseph or Israel enslaving the Egyptians. Y'all see the manipulation? You see the dishonesty, the lying and deceit. So next time someone comes to you talking about Israel or the Egyptians enslaved Israel, y'all can share the history with them. Okay, that it was actually Israel through Joseph colluding with Pharaoh who enslaved the Egyptians first. So what is this telling us? Well, there's a more, an autochthonous more, colluding with hybrids to enslave his own people. And maybe that has something to do with why the shift from initially the original initial zodiac is the circumpolar zodiac projection. Why that shifted to the solar projection. Why? To facilitate mythology, the introduction of mythology and religion and external God worship. All right, let's go back. Let's go back to the chapter. So I'm going to start from the top. Nearly 6 centuries before the reputed birth of Christ, Solon, a Greek philosopher, visited Egypt and had frequent intercourse with the priests who had charge of the sacred writings of Egypt. So these are no low-level priests. These were priests who had power and position, and they were responsible for the sacred writings of Egypt. What are these sacred writings? They would have been astrological, right? They would have been astrological. And what? And Hermetic. Hermetic meaning the natural laws that govern the planetary body movements. In the course of these interviews relating to the antiquity of Greece and Egypt, y'all see how the winner writes history, right? I hope you see this. In the course of these interviews relating to the antiquity, relating to the history of Greece and Egypt, a priest said to him, now Dr. Clark said of a Egyptian priest who would have been a professor, a scientist, engineer, something of that sort, not a religious guy. I believe he said Alexander the Great came to him, or some high-level Greek came to him and asked a question. And the priest basically dogged him out. Told him he hadn't lived long enough and didn't know enough to even ask him a question that he was deemed worthy to answer. Told him to come back in 25 years. I'm sure y'all, if y'all watch Dr. Clark's video, I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. That just came to mind. All right. So in the course of these interviews relating to the antiquity of Greece and Egypt, a priest said to Solon, O Solon, O sun, city of the sun, you Hellenes, that's also sun, right? That's also sun. Solar zodiac projection. You Hellenes are but children. And there is never an old man who is Hellene. End quote. So Solon now says, what do you mean? I'm going to continue. I mean, said the priest, that in mind, you are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you. In other words, you have no history. Listen, you're young in mind. You are, let me repeat, that in mind you are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you by ancient travelers, nor any science, which is hoary with age. Hoary, the meaning of hoary. I think that has to do with the Zodiac, y'all. I gotta look it up, I don't remember. Hold on. Hoary. It escapes my memory. Gray or white with age. Gray or white or as if with age. Covered with grayish hair. I was totally wrong. Hoary means very old and familiar. Let's see. Hoary means gray or white. With or as if with age, extremely old. Maybe that's why I'm thinking Zodiac. I've seen this word before with Zodiac, I believe. Yeah, horary astrology. That's what I was thinking, horary astrology. Horary astrology is an ancient branch of horoscopic astrology. Okay, so let's keep it moving. Nor any science which is hoary, white or gray with age. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear it? Now, of course, there's going to be a reason that they don't have in ancient history, and there's going to be a reason why they don't have an ancient knowledge base passed down to them through the generations. And this is where we should be very suspicious, right? History, the winner writes the history, set of agreed upon lines. Jeremiah 8, verse 8. All right, these people are what? Literary magicians. They use a magic wand we call a pen, made out of Hollywood. Okay? They just make stuff up. Okay, so here we go, y'all. Let's get into the finesse. As for these genealogies of yours, as for these genealogies of yours. Well, when we think about genealogies, we have to go into what? The Heliobibliothèque, right? Genealogy of JC, the Christ figure, genealogies all throughout the Old Testament, right? As for these genealogies of yours, which you have recounted to us, you coming into Kemet, coming into Egypt, talking about your genealogies. And the Hermetic priest said that these have no value. They're not ancient. They don't communicate any ancient history. They don't communicate any ancient science. I'm summarizing what's happening here for you. As for these genealogies of yours, which you have recounted to us, Solon, they are no better than the tales of children. So y'all know the genealogies is what they use to prove Christ is who they say he is, or Jesus rather, is who they say he is. That Jesus is the what? The Messiah, is the Christ. For in the first place, you remember one deluge, you remember one flood. You remember one flood only. So he's talking about Noah's flood, right? He's talking about Noah's flood. You remember one flood only, whereas there were many of them. There were many floods. And in the next place, you do not know that there dwelt in your fair land. Here's the finesse. You do not know that there dwelt in your fair land. Listen to the extreme language here. The superlative language. First of all, Greeks are non-descendable if these are the hybrids, right? Humans cannot inherit land. They cannot own land by law. A human in a law dictionary, y'all go look it up, monster. Non-descendable, although born from a woman's womb, in wedlock, is non-descendable. So that's the first finesse in this story. Let me read this again. And in the next place, you do not know. Remember? This ain't related to genealogies. He says, you do not know that there dwelt in your fair land the fairest and noblest race of men which ever lived. Now, this is a Hermetic priest responsible for all of the records of Kemet. You're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of records. Telling a Greek philosopher that his people are more noble, are more fair than all of the Kemetic men and women who had ever lived on the planet. You do not know that there dwelt in your fair land the fairest and noblest race of men which ever lived. Okay, y'all, let's start thinking. The Greeks, their history that we've been taught in school, is it a noble history? Or did they get everything they got through robbing, stealing, warfare, bondage, deception, and deceit? Would you say that the Greeks, their religious practices, what we know about their rites and rituals and secret societies, would you say that they were honorable in all things? To the extreme. Do they have a history of warfare and violence? Do they have a history of military conquest? But yet, this is a Hermetic priest who has nothing to benefit, nothing to gain by having any interaction or intercourse, commerce with Solon, this Greek philosopher. But yet he's going to tell him that the Greeks are more noble than any Hermetic man, than any autochthonous Moor who ever lived. Use your faculty of critical thinking. Y'all think this happened? What's the probability, the likelihood of that Hermetic priest telling Solon, this Greek hybrid philosopher, that? He's a hybrid. So even the notion that he has an ancient history is false, right? Because the hybrids were created by the Elohim, or Yaqub and his 12 feminine scientists who work with him, scientists and engineers who work with him on that engineering product that produced the Neanderthal, the amorphodite. Okay, y'all, Genesis chapter 1, 26 and 27. So let's continue with the finesse. He continues, you do not know that there dwelt in your fair land the fairest and noblest race. Second point, race is a social construct. There is no such thing as race. It's a socio-political construct. So they're using a modern day social political construct, race, and then pushing it, using it, how many thousands of years ago? You cannot do this. This concept did not exist then. Y'all see it? This is finesse. The noblest race of men which ever lived, of whom you and your whole city are but a seed or a remnant. In other words, they are the offspring, the posterity, the children of these great, most noble men who ever walked on the planet. And this was unknown to you. So what's happening here? Below the radar. The author of this story about Solon and the Egyptian priest who he's having intercourse with, communicating with through these interviews, are indirectly, the message is the Greeks, that the most prestigious Egyptian priests are co-signing to the legitimacy and nobility of the Greeks. See, that's the subliminal message. The Hermetic priests are co-signing to the legitimacy, to the nobility, the what's the word? Honor, to the honor of Greeks, which goes to what? Their right to impose their rule over the autochthonous indigenous Moors. They're using this interview to legitimize the Greeks. And as this was unknown to you, Solon, Because for many generations, the survivors of that destruction died. What destruction? The flood. The survivors of those floods died and left no sign. They left you no records. They left you no written records. They left you no oral traditions, no oral histories. For there was a time, Solon, before the great deluge of all, when the city, which is now Athens, was first in war and was preeminent for the excellence of her law. See, the Hermetic priest is co-signing on the legitimacy of the Greeks. Y'all see it? And is said to have performed the noblest deeds. So you can trust the Greeks because they're honorable and they're noble. In fact, they're the most noble of all men who ever lived. The Greeks are trustworthy. If they take your stuff, it's because they're supposed to take your stuff. They deserve it and you don't. And it's right and it's law. Because you're a sinner and they are the gods. You need to accept Christianity because it came from the Greeks and the Romans. And these are the most noble of all men. Y'all see it? So you need to accept the bondage. Now what better group of people could there be to co-sign you, to present you to the world, than the Hermetic priests? The survivors of that destruction died and left no sign, either written or oral. For there was a time, Solon, before that great deluge of all, that the city which now is Athens was first in war. So they're brave, courageous, right? Fight for right. And was preeminent for the excellence of her laws. So they take your stuff, put you in bondage. Well, that's okay, because why? They are preeminent in law. So you must have deserved it. You just don't understand law. But you're feeling bad for it. And is said to have performed the most noblest deeds, like putting you in bondage, stealing your land, and giving you Christianity. See, that's noble. And to have had the fairest constitution of any of which tradition tells under the face of the S-U-N sun. And now the Egyptian priest has co-signed that the Greeks are the most wonderful, the most beautiful, the most loving, the most fair, the most righteous, the most learned in law, the most learned in science group of people that ever existed on the face of the earth. But yet they have nothing to show for that in terms of architecture, in terms of oral or written records. They have nothing. They have no, in fact, they never even started a religion. What religion can you attribute to the Greeks and the Romans? They just recycled other solar religions using the template of the solar or ecliptical zodiac, right? They just recycled it. But there's no evidence to support any of this. Okay, so this is all just talk. Solon marveled at this and earnestly requested to the priest to inform him exactly about these former citizens of Athens, quote unquote. Here's what Solon said. Here's what the priest continues to say. You are welcome to hear about them, Solon, said the priest, both for your own sake and for the sake of the goddess, who is the common patron and protector and educator of both our cities. Wow. So now, this story connects Greece or Athens to Kemet. There's a Patreon goddess, a protector and educator of both of our cities. So in other words, they're being educated by the same teacher. So they are what? Equals. This is the subliminal message in this. So what's happening here? This author is trying to transfer the glory, the prestige, the preeminence of Kemet onto Athens, onto Greece. By what? By way of that magic wand, that Hollywood, that pen. And what? Narrative transportation to capture your imagination. And then get you to what? Propagandize yourself. What's the next step? Well, the more you hear it, listen to it, get exposed to this, the more you begin to adapt your life around it, meaning you accept the values, the principles. You begin to live your life according to these stories. She, this goddess that they have in common, founded your city 1,000 years before ours. So now, the Egyptian priest has just now said that Athens is more ancient than Egypt. 1,000 years more ancient than Kemet. And they have the same founder. It's a goddess. So now we're talking about what? Now we're getting into birthrights. So this goddess founded Athens, your city, 1,000 years before ours, Egypt, which is set down in our sacred registry. So now it's on the public record. Athens is on the public record in Egypt as having been founded 1,000 years before Egypt was founded. Okay? Which is set down in our sacred registrars as 8,000 years old. And that's where they screwed themselves. That's where the story falls apart. Why does the story fall apart, y'all? When he says 8,000 years, which is set down in our sacred registrars as 8,000 years old. Why does the story fall apart now? Well, they made two major mistakes. One, they cited a location, and then next they cited what? A date. So now all you need to do is go back and check those locations and that date. And we know that Kemet is vastly older than 8,000 years. See, they never thought we autochthonous Moors would get our hands on this information. They never thought that Hiram Abiff would resurrect. They never thought it. That's the arrogance. You know, just like in the story about the tortoise and the hare, the arrogance of the hare, the arrogance of the rabbit, who, you know, ran, you know, right before the finish line. You know, he just blew the turtle away. And then he, you know, in his arrogance, he decided he was going to take a nap, confident that he would win. But it was his arrogance that caused him to lose, right? So what do we know? When you consider the Sphinx has erosion marks that suggest its age is well over 25,000 years. Well over 25,000 years. That's 300 plus times more than 8,000. So 8 times 3 is 24. So 8,000, 6,000, 24,000, throw in another 1,000 years. So you already know this is BS. See, the critical thinking mind, the faculty of critical thinking. We didn't do a whole bunch of work, right? But we're well read. And we can put 2 and 2 together. So this goddess founded your city 1,000 years before ours. That means that Kemet would have been founded 7,000 years ago. And we know that the record doesn't bear that out, which is set down in our sacred registers, our sacred records, as 8,000 years old. Athens is 8,000 years old. So, what's the personality type? The narcissist has to be better, has to be the best in every category of categories that exist. As touching the citizens of 9,000 years ago, I will briefly inform you of their laws and of the noblest of their archons, and the exact particulars of the whole we will hereafter go through at our leisure in the sacred registers themselves. Oh, now he's going to show a foreigner, a hybrid at that, the sacred records that he's in charge of. Is that not derelict of duty, y'all? You're going to show him the sacred records? Why you trust this guy so much? What is he doing for you that you would share the sacred registries or the sacred records with him? Y'all see how ridiculous this stuff is when you use your faculty of critical thinking? Of course, he's not going to show a foreigner their sacred registries. That would be foolish. Let alone extremely irresponsible. The reader, we're going back to the author now, page 134. The reader is to remember. Oh, I almost forgot. So he showed him, the priest, going back to what we just read, I will briefly inform you of their laws, the laws in Athens, and of the oldest of their noble. So in other words, he's going to make him an eyewitness. He's going to show him the records so he can see the records with his own eyes, that they were the noblest, and that they had the preeminent laws that had ever existed. So that what? Now there's firsthand knowledge. He saw the evidence. Solon would have seen the evidence. Do y'all see this? The reader is to remember that all this was copied from the manuscript of Solon. So Solon wrote this stuff. So now what is Solon's credibility? Do we give Solon full faith and credit, y'all? Like we used to say, well, who the hell is you? Are y'all gonna give Solon full faith and credit? Me, I'm not. I'm not. See, I know their history. I know what they do. I know how they roll. So I don't trust them. I don't trust them as far as I can throw a piano. The reader is to remember that all this was copied from the manuscript of Solon. Word for word, as given by the Egyptian priest to Solon. Well, of course, you should believe Solon. Why? Because he's honorable and noble, and he's a lawman. And all of his ancestors were the most noble, the most moral, and they all had the best law. So you got every reason in the world to believe him. That's what they want you to work out for yourself, to propagandize yourself, right? Through what? Through narrative transportation. But we're not falling for these tricks anymore. Right, scholars? Right, Morris? We're not giving them full faith and credit. Show the evidence. Show the proof. And Plato was born in the year 429 BC. Oh. Let's see. 429. 4 plus 2 is 6. 9 plus 6 is 15. 15 is a 1 and a 5. 1 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. So here we are back at 6. Here we are back at the number 6. And remember, 6 is the perfect man. I got that out of the Astrology in the New Testament. I think that's what it's called. No, the Zodiac. What was it in the class I did before this one? The Zodiac and the New Testament, something like that. The number 6 is perfect man. Do y'all see that? There's a numerology. So Plato was born in 429 BC and died at Athens in 347 BCE. So 3 plus 4 is 7. Plus 7 is 14. So you got 2 7s. Perfect harmony. Or universal harmony, right? The number 7, universal harmony. So 2 7s, that would be universal harmony, or universal harmony emphasized. And when it says universal harmony, they're not talking about you. They're talking about universal harmony for them and their rulership over you. So Plato died at the age of 82 years. And also that 594 BCE, Solon, remember Solon is Sol, S-O-L in Latin is S-U-N sun. The S-U-N sun is also the S-O-N sun. So Solon and on, so Sol and on is the Heliopolis, city of the sun. So Solon was archon or chief magistrate of Athens. Solon was the chief magistrate of Athens in 594 BC. Solon was the umpire in all law matters. So now they're giving you his accolades, his achievements, so that you can believe him. Okay? Solon was the chief magistrate of Athens, chief lawyer, as it were, was the umpire in all law matters, so he settled all matters in law. And Solon was regarded equally highly by both the rich and the poor. In other words, he was a fair man. He was a just man. Didn't matter if you were rich, didn't matter if you were poor. He treated you with justice. Y'all see how they're trying to give you credibility so you can believe Solon? You can believe this story, this manuscript that Solon wrote. You can believe that what he said the ancient Hermetic priest told him is true. Okay? So Solon was regarded equally high by both rich and poor. He wasn't doing it for the money or the fame, the prestige, which regard greatly adds to the authenticity of his narrative. So that's why you should believe his narrative. You should believe the manuscript that Solon wrote. Now, of course, I'm not saying that. I'm explaining to you what's happening in the story subliminally. But I don't give them full faith and credit. I don't believe any of it. Why? Because I use my critical thinking mind, and I'm well read, and I'm applying what I know to see the BS, the finesse. The priest continued, quote, so now they just established, they just connected, they just transferred some of the shine of Plato onto Solon, and they just established Solon's credibility, hoping you give them full faith and credit. Now they're going to go back to the priest. The priest continued, many great and wonderful deeds are recorded in your state, in our histories. Okay, so the prestige and honor of the ancient Hermetic priests and pharaohs are co-signing, legitimizing these many great and wonderful deeds. It's in their records. But one of them exceeds them in greatness and valor. For these histories tell us of a mighty power which was aggressively, wantonly against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city put an end. So in other words, the Greeks are the heroes. The Greeks are the heroes. And they saved the world. They saved even Egypt. Let me read it again. For these histories tell of a mighty power which was aggressively, wantonly against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city, which Athens, put an end. they defeated this great mighty power. This power came forth from the Atlantic Ocean. Y'all should already know where this is going. This great military, this great aggressive, wantonly aggressive, irresponsible, immoral empire came forth from the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean, Atlantic. For in those days, the Atlantic was navigable. And there was an island situated in front of the strait, which you call the columns of Hercules. And then in brackets, this is what it says in brackets. I'm on page 134. In brackets, it says this. The reader knows probably that this refers to the Strait of Gibraltar, leading from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean. So that's the end of the bracket. The island, this is the island of this great military power. The island was larger than Libya and Asia. And then in brackets again, it says here, then Asia was what we now call Asia Minor. That's the end of brackets. So the island was larger than Libya and Asia put together. And was the way to other islands. And from the islands you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent. Listen, y'all. From the islands you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent which surrounded the true ocean. From this sea, which is within the Strait of Hercules, which is the Mediterranean, right? It is only a harbor having a narrow entrance, but that the other real sea and surrounding land may be most truly called a continent. So this is giving us geographical location. So this is at once evident. And then in brackets, this is what it reads in brackets. That this continent, which surrounded the ocean, is the North and South American continents. Zamexum. And Africa is now easily proved by consulting any good chart. In other words, look at a map or a projection of the land mass or a projection of the earth, a map. So I'm going to stop right here, scholars, because it looks like they got some things going on. I don't want to interrupt with what they're doing. So I hope y'all learned something. We're going to pick this back up hopefully tomorrow on page 135, the first paragraph on the page, all right? And I think we'll be able to finish this chapter tomorrow, so the next class. So I hope y'all learned something. I hope you enjoyed being here with me in this class. I strongly recommend everyone come to my Saturday class, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Send me an email and I'll send you the link. The link in the description area is not working. I might reconnect it. We'll see. But send me a link. Send me an email. yasapa@zionlawschool.org. YASAPA @Zion, school, SCHOOL.org, and I'll send you the link for the class, okay? All right, y'all. Have a good one. All right. 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 Thanks everyone. If you want to support my work, you can send a donation to my Patreon. The link is in the description area of the video. My PayPal, the link is in the description area, or buy my books. But don't buy my books on my website because I'm still locked out. You're gonna have to buy them on Amazon or something like that, all right? So Islam to all the Moors, assalamu alaikum. Thanks again, y'all. I'll see y'all in the next class, hopefully within the next 12 to 24 hours.